€100 million is a lot of money. It's enough to buy 500 brand new Lamborghinis, purchase 2 million copies of EAFC, or send 2 partially reusable rockets into outer space. Heck, it's more money than I make in a whole year. For that kind of money, you could fund the US military for almost an hour and 10 minutes, or foot the bill for a whopping 0.2% of Israel's war in Gaza. So far, that is, of course. I'm not sure why you'd want to. That used to be a hospital, but you could. The first footballer to transfer for €100 million was Gareth Bale, who joined Real Madrid from Tottenham Hotspur for that fee back in 2013, breaking the previous record of €94 million for Cristiano Ronaldo in 2009, which was also paid by Real Madrid. Since then, a further 17 players have transferred for €100 million plus fees, half of them since 2020 alone, and one of them for over €200 million. It's no secret that not all hugely expensive players during the modern era have been a huge success. In fact, a great many of them have been catastrophic failures. I even made a video about the phenomenon of the most expensive signings frequently being flops not all that long ago, in which someone asked me to try and rank them from worst to best. Given the context, it is just worth reiterating that, at this stage, only about 4 of the 18 €100 million plus signings could be described as a resounding success, and you could even argue that, for various reasons, not a single one of them fully fits that description, or not yet at least. It doesn't take much to feature quite high up this list then, is what I'm trying to get at, and you have to have been an utterly catastrophic failure to feature anywhere near the beginning. And I mean really and truly apocalyptically atrocious. On that note, and without further ado, who never transfer for more than €1.5 million, so obviously doesn't feature, here is how I would currently rank every €100 million plus signing in the history of football, from worst to best. 18th, Eden Hazard. I should make it clear right at the outset that I am ranking every €100 million plus signing on the basis of how good or bad they were as signings. Factors such as their fee, wages, performances and contribution for the buying club, and potential or realised sell-on value are all relevant, but the player's ability, prior achievements, or anything else for that matter, are not. That distinction is illustrated emphatically by the inclusion of Eden Hazard in 18th, who certainly isn't the least talented or accomplished player in this list, but is, I think, the worst €100 million plus signing of all time, and quite possibly the worst signing full stop. We'll start with the numbers. Hazard cost Real Madrid an upfront €100 million in the summer of 2019, rising to almost €150 million, subject to add-ons, making him the 6th most expensive player on the planet at the time, and Real Madrid's most expensive of all time. He signed a 5-year contract worth a reported €125 million before bonuses, taking his overall cost to Real Madrid to somewhere between 225 to 300 million euros, and he proceeded to be blighted by issues relating to fitness, injuries and fatigue. He scored just 7 goals and made 12 assists across 4 seasons and 76 appearances at the Bernabeu, and his contract was terminated 12 months earlier than anticipated by mutual agreement, meaning that Real Madrid had to pay Hazard off, receive no sell-on value, and the Belgian subsequently retired from football, aged only 32. Hazard arrived at Real Madrid as the 3rd best player on the planet in a lot of people's eyes. He never even looked like one of the better players in Madrid during his time at the club. Each of his mere 19 goal contributions over the course of 4 whole years cost Madrid roughly €13 million. This was a truly wretched piece of business, with practically no redeeming qualities whatsoever, and it played a large part in reshaping the whole transfer market, forcing all clubs, but especially Real Madrid, to radically reconsider how much they paid for players already in their late 20s. 17th, Antoine Griezmann. El Clasico rivals Real Madrid and Barcelona have contested some of football's most iconic battles. and the battle to have made the worst €100 million plus signing is no exception. Anything that Madrid can do, Barca can do too, and the Blaugrana proved that in emphatic style in the summer of 2019. A month after Madrid signed Eden Hazard for €100 million, with almost €50 million in potential future add-ons, Barcelona signed Antoine Griezmann from Atletico Madrid by activating his €120 million release clause. Griezmann had been the talisman for Atletico for the preceding 5 years and one of the leading players in European football, finishing third in both 2016 and 2018 Ballon d'Or voting, while inspiring France to the final of Euro 2016 and going one better at the 2018 World Cup. His time in Catalonia would be a little bit less spectacular. Griezmann faced a number of issues at Barca. One is that his best role is a withdrawn one, when given plenty of license to drift into central areas from the right flank, and Barcelona just so happened to have the best player on the planet at doing that, who Griezmann had to compete with. Meanwhile, Griezmann was forced out wide onto the left or to play as a makeshift centre-forward. Then there was the managerial turnover from Ernesto Valverde to Quique Setien to Ronald Koeman, all of whom had different ideas as to how and where Griezmann should play. And finally there was the broader malaise at Barcelona at the time, of which Griezmann was both a victim and a cause of the problem. When you factor in his return to Atletico on loan, where he routinely played only 30 minutes in games, to avoid triggering a €40 million buyout clause, only for Atletico to then re-sign him for just €20 million, the fact that he only won one Copa del Rey at Barcelona, whereas Atletico won the La Liga title in his absence, with a squad that Barca had massively helped them to assemble, including Luis Suarez, signed from Barca for just €6 million, and Griezmann's reported €20 million a year salary, which, combined with his transfer fee, played a large part in Barcelona's financial meltdown, and this, therefore, is just an all-time dreadful signing. Griezmann's signing was probably more comically terrible than Hazard's for all of those reasons, but he avoids last place by virtue of the fact that his actual record at Barcelona, 35 goals and 17 assists from 102 games, was much better than Hazard's at Madrid, and Barca did at least recoup something for him, even if it was a fairly paltry €20 million, rather than having to terminate his contract so that he could go and retire. 16th, Philippe Coutinho. There's almost nothing to split Antoine Griezmann and Philippe Coutinho when it comes to dreadful Barcelona signings, and they happen just 18 months apart. It's really no wonder that the club was financially crippled. Coutinho's arrival made more sense on the face of it, as a supremely gifted Brazilian flair player who could score and create goals playing centrally or off the left, making him a seemingly suitable replacement for Neymar, whereas Griezmann operated in similar spaces to Messi, which was just never going to work out. Whatever the theory, however, the reality of Coutinho's move was that he cost a potential £142 million, or €195 million at the time, subject to add-ons, making him still either the second or third most expensive player of all time. His first half season was fine, but it was all downhill from there, and his most memorable moment in a Barcelona game during his time contracted to the club was scoring a brace off the bench against them in an 8-2 drubbing in the Champions League while on loan at Bayern Munich, en route to winning the treble. If you don't laugh, Barca fans, you'll cry. Coutinho played just over 100 games in Catalonia before being sold to Aston Villa for just £17 million. Barca didn't just spend over €100 million on Coutinho, therefore, they lost over €100 million on him. 15th. Romelu Lukaku. Oh boy. Romelu Lukaku is actually the most expensive footballer of all time in terms of cumulative transfer fees, having changed hands for a total of more than £350 million over the course of his 6 transfers. The most expensive, and undoubtedly the worst, was his £97.5 million, or €115 million move, to Chelsea in the summer of 2021. It was Lukaku's second stint at Chelsea, following 0 goals in 15 games during his first, with the Blues seemingly not having got the message about never going back, and about being careful with paying exorbitant fees for players in their late 20s during the post-Hazard and Griezmann era. In fairness, at the time, it was a move which had plenty of admirers, with several pundits describing Lukaku as the missing piece in the jigsaw for a Chelsea team that had just won the Champions League without a world-class centre-forward and was now eyeing up the Premier League title. Lukaku had scored 64 goals in 95 games over the last 2 seasons at Inter Milan, and he found the back of the net against Arsenal in his second Chelsea debut. In 3 years contracted to the Blues though, only one of which he actually spent playing for them, Lukaku scored just 7 more Premier League goals and only an additional 14 in all competitions. He also didn't exactly help matters when he gave an interview to Sky Italia 4 months after his return, in which he stated that he wasn't happy at Chelsea and wanted to return to Inter. Sure enough, in 2022, Lukaku rejoined Inter on loan, followed by Roma, and in the summer just gone, Lukaku joined Napoli for a €30 million fee. Lukaku's Chelsea reunion was a total disaster. He cost €115 million, was paid a reported £325,000 a week, scored just 8 Premier League goals, took the Blues no closer to winning the title, left after a single season on loan in which he did a car crash interview, and was eventually sold for just €30 million. 14th, Antony. Antony can't feature below Eden Hazard, Antoine Griezmann or Romelu Lukaku because while those transfer sagas are now concluded, we know exactly how they turned out for the buying club. Antony still has 3 years left on his 5-year deal at Manchester United, and he is only 24 years old, opening up the remote possibility that he could either still come good or be sold for a somewhat significant fee. Look, I doubt it too, but it could happen, alright? We might not be able to definitively state that Antony is the worst €100 million signing of all time just yet, but we can say that he is probably the most ridiculous. The cheapest player to feature in this video, Manchester United paid Ajax €95 million for Antony up front, plus €5 million in future add-ons, narrowly qualifying him for inclusion. Very well known to Erik ten Hag following their time together at Ajax, Antony is undoubtedly talented. He is, alright? He definitely is. He excelled in the Eredivisie and started games regularly for Brazil in 2022, but there has been almost no evidence of it during his time at Old Trafford, and his transfer fee, which was twice as much as Liverpool paid for either Luis Diaz or Mohamed Salah, always seemed excessive at best and, well, utterly demented or perhaps some kind of ludicrous money laundering scheme at worst. Antony has so far scored 12 goals and made 5 assists in all competitions, across more than 2 years and some 86 appearances for the Red Devils, which is fewer goals than Scott McTominay has scored for the club during that time, and he costs nothing and doesn't play for them anymore. He was also accused of domestic violence by his girlfriend and 2 other women a year ago, accusations which Antony denies, causing him to be dropped by Brazil. I mean, I reckon they would have dropped him for other reasons, but that was the stated one. So, all round, just an absolutely dog-dirt signing with about as many redeeming qualities as the convicted serial killer Harold Shipman. 13th, Paul Pogba. 13 is unlucky for some, and Paul Pogba's signing was unlucky for just about everyone involved in that deal, with the exception of his agent, the late Mino Raiola, who made a killing out of it. Like Lukaku to Chelsea, Pogba was a very expensive returnee for Manchester United. A graduate of the club's youth ranks, Pogba had left for Juventus having been denied what he deemed to be adequate game time by Alex Ferguson, and he proceeded to become one of the most highly regarded midfielders on the planet. Aided by the likes of Claudio Marchisio, Andrea Pirlo and Arturo Vidal in the Juventus midfield, Pogba's physical, mental and technical abilities were allowed to flourish on a grand stage, and there can be no doubt that, at his best, there were few finer weapons in world football. Manchester United valued those talents, and Pogba's marketing potential, if we're being entirely honest, are €105 million, making him the most expensive player of all time in the summer of 2016, breaking Gareth Bale's 3-year record. Pogba had his moments back at Old Trafford, even making the PFA Team of the Year in the 2018-19 season, which is enough to put him well clear of the likes of Hazard and Lukaku, but the overall picture was a bleak one. Pogba cost an absolute fortune in terms of both his fee and wages. He never achieved the kind of consistency that he had in a formidable midfield at Juventus in a flaky one at Man United, and his last 3 seasons in particular, which, is quite a lot, 3 seasons, were a total car crash, in which Pogba's presence, it could certainly be argued, actively caused the club more harm than good. He also departed for absolutely nothing after his contract expired, which probably drops him down further another few places, despite the glimpses of talent during his time in a Man United shirt. 12th. João Felix. There were 2 ways of viewing João Felix's massive move to Atletico Madrid. One is that it made no sense because he was a technically gifted wonder kid who flourished with the freedom to express himself at Benfica, whereas Atletico under Diego Simeone play a very disciplined and regimented style of football. Meanwhile, the other was that Atletico, including under Simeone, had long been an excellent place for talented young forwards to develop, whether that be Fernando Torres before him or Sergio Aguero and Antoine Griezmann after him. Ultimately, the first theory would prove to be the more valid one in this instance. Felix set Atletico back €126 million, the 4th highest fee in the history of the sport at the time, but his debut campaign was a difficult one, as he failed to hit double figures in either the league or in all competitions. The best description of Felix is that he is undoubtedly a very good player, just one who, for a variety of reasons, doesn't always play that well. Now aged 24, he hasn't hit double figures in the league since leaving Benfica over 5 years ago, and he hasn't scored more than 10 goals in all competitions in a single season since. The most assists that he has made in a league campaign is 6, and that was in his debut season with Atletico. For a €126 million player, it would be fair to call it all a little bit underwhelming. Following loan spells at Chelsea and Barcelona, Felix joined the Blues on a permanent basis for €52 million in the summer just gone, plus €5 million in future add-ons, as Conor Gallagher headed in the opposite direction. The potential €57 million salvage keeps Felix's move to Atletico from troubling the very bottom reaches of this list, but the reality is that he was a huge marquee signing for a club that rarely, never in fact, invests that sort of money on a single player. It never quite clicked, he didn't have a single truly outstanding season, and they lost him for at least €70 million less than they paid for him, right when he should theoretically be coming into his prime. 11th. Usman Dembele. There are some signings, like Griezmann to Barcelona or Antony to Manchester United, where either the transfers themselves, the fees, or both, just never make sense. That wasn't the case, in all fairness, with Usman Dembele. Much as his €105 million upfront fee, plus €40 million in possible future add-ons, may have seemed exorbitant, and is exorbitant, just 12 months after Dortmund had signed him for an initial €15 million from Rennes, but at the time, and to this day, were it not for injuries, I could see the logic. Dembele was genuinely remarkable in his debut campaign at Dortmund, and having just turned 20, I could see a world where signing him for half of what they had received for Neymar from PSG could actually turn out to be a shrewd piece of business. Unfortunately, Dembele would be crippled by injuries. That not only restricted the Frenchman to just 185 appearances in 6 seasons in Catalonia, it also prevented him from developing in a way, and serving up performances in a manner, that I have little doubt that he would have been capable of were it not for those injuries. We are dealing with the world as it is, rather than as it could have been though, and the reality is that Dembele cost a fortune, didn't come close to filling the void vacated by Neymar, and was sold to PSG in 2023 for less than half of what Barcelona paid for him. 10th. Enzo Fernandez. I am happy to be corrected, but I don't think anyone in the history of football has seen their value increase as rapidly as Enzo Fernandez. Signed by Benfica for just €10 million, plus €8 million in add-ons in the summer of 2022, just 6 months later, after starring in Argentina's World Cup success, Chelsea signed Fernandez for an extraordinary €106.8 million, an increase of roughly €90 million in half a season. It made Fernandez, and still makes him, the 5th most expensive footballer of all time, and when that is the case, expectations are always going to be sky high. There's no doubt that Fernandez is immensely talented, but then, that is sort of the minimum requirement, isn't it? No one who isn't immensely talented is going to transfer for more than €100 million. Well, except Antony, obviously. Where was I? Oh yeah, Fernandez is undoubtedly talented, but Chelsea haven't managed to get the best out of those talents yet, routinely playing him further forward than he does for Argentina, where he still appears to be much more effective. He made racist chants about black members of the French national team on Argentina's team bus in the summer, angering and upsetting black members of the Chelsea dressing room, like Wesley Fofana, who spoke out about it on social media, Axel Disasi and Malo Gusto, who also unfollowed him on social media, and, people who don't like racism in general, and even if it weren't for Chelsea misusing him, and him either being a racist or a person who says racist things, depending on how generous your interpretation, the fee was absolutely eye-watering. 10th is as low as Fernandez could go, because he's still only 23, could still have a very successful career at Chelsea, and is probably still worth a lot of money, albeit I don't think over €100 million, in my humble opinion anyway, but it's also about as high as he could go, based upon his start to life at Stamford Bridge, performance levels, and off-field indiscretions. 9th, Cristiano Ronaldo. I should be absolutely clear, Cristiano Ronaldo's only €100 million transfer, and therefore the one that we are referring to, was from Real Madrid to Juventus in the summer of 2018. Ronaldo's moves to both Manchester United and Real Madrid were among the greatest deals of the modern era, and indeed, I can already feel some people sharpening their pitchforks and heading down to the comments, Ronaldo only finishing slap bang in the middle of this list. Their reasons are probably pretty straightforward. Ronaldo scored 101 goals in 134 games for Juventus, a remarkable level of output, unmatched by all but one other inclusion in this list. Ronaldo gets a big fat tick on that front then, but it is how good of a signing he was for Juventus, not how good he was at putting the ball in the back of the net for them, that we are ranking here. And the reality, on that front, is that Ronaldo broke all Italian spending records, aged 33 already, radically altering Juventus' pay structure as one of the 2 highest paid players on the planet in the process. He was brought in basically with the express intention of getting Juve over the line in the Champions League, where they had lost 2 finals in the last 3 years. But not only would they go backwards in Europe, knocked out in the Champions League quarter-finals, in all 3 of Ronaldo's seasons in Turin, in his last season, their run of 9 straight Serie A titles came to an end, as Juve fell all the way to 4th. Juventus eventually cut their losses, selling Ronaldo to Manchester United for just €15 million up front, plus a potential €8 million in add-ons. In other words, Juve signed Ronaldo with a clear goal in mind. They not only failed to realise that goal with him leading their line, but actively went backwards, severely damaging their finances and wage structure, as Ronaldo earns over 3 times as much as any other player in Serie A, and they lost about €80 million on him, or €250 million, if you include wages as well. A great player, but not such a great signing. 8th, Jack Grealish. A difficult signing to fully evaluate at this stage, where Cristiano Ronaldo failed at Juventus, it must be said, in terms of winning the Champions League. Jack Grealish has already succeeded at Manchester City. Signed for €117 million from Aston Villa, making him the most expensive English player of all time. Following a slow debut campaign at the Etihad, in his 2nd season, Grealish made 50 appearances and played an integral role in an extraordinary treble-winning campaign, starting in every single one of the club's Champions League knockout stage matches, up to and including the final. It would be hyperbolic to say that justified Grealish's enormous fee, a bit like when people make that claim of Fernando Torres at Chelsea, but it would be equally sensationalist to call Grealish an outright flop, as some have done, with that in mind. Grealish has only had one great season since joining Man City for a massive fee, and he is 29 years old already, so 8 is as generous as one could be. Yet in a world of dreadful €100 million plus signings, Grealish is at least someone who has played a significant role in a tremendously successful side. 7th, Neymar. This one is likely to divide opinion. Despite the fact that it has been over 7 years since Neymar's move to PSG, in which the Qatari-owned French club activated his release clause, he remains by far the most expensive player of all time. €222 million was the price tag, more than doubling the existing world record fee at the time, and it was a transfer that sent shockwaves through the world of football. I have made a whole video about Neymar's legacy, called something like The Goat That Never Was, but the condensed version of his move to PSG is that the Parisians saw Neymar as both a statement of intent and as a ticket to winning a Champions League title. Meanwhile, Neymar saw it as an opportunity to escape Messi's shadow, get his hands on the Ballon d'Or, and earn a shed load of cash in the process. The last one certainly materialised, but PSG failed to win the Champions League, and Neymar fell out of the Ballon d'Or podium places, and even the list of nominees, by the end of his time in Paris. Neymar is 7th in this list because he was genuinely outstanding for PSG, playing the best football of his career, winning 13 trophies, and putting up outrageous numbers for 6 seasons, but he can't be any higher than 7th because he failed on his and PSG's own terms. He missed an enormous amount of football and, he cost €222 million. It is just worth noting that PSG sold Neymar for €90 million to Al Hilal, recouping over 40% of his initial fee. Hey, I'm not saying that it makes him a bargain, but net, it means that he cost about the same amount as Philippe Coutinho, and he was certainly a much, much better signing than him. 6th, Moises Caicedo. This is going to seem high to a lot of people, or perhaps even like I must be high, and there is of course a great deal of speculation with more recent transfers, unlike older deals, where we can judge them with the fullness of time. Moises Caicedo only joined Chelsea in the summer of 2023 for €116.2 million from Brighton, and there is no way of spinning that as anything other than an astronomical fee. Brighton paid just €5 million for Caicedo in 2021. Caicedo also had a very difficult debut campaign in what was a terrible season for Chelsea last year. Nonetheless, I think Caicedo can become one of the best midfielders in the world and has already been radically more impressive in a massively improved Chelsea team so far this season. Still only 22 years old, Caicedo combines the athleticism, relentlessness, and ball-winning capabilities of a world-class midfield enforcer with the cunning, awareness, and technique of a top-class deep-lying playmaker. Maybe this is going to age terribly, but avoiding Dembele-esque injury problems, I think he'll become the second most important player at Chelsea, behind Benoit Badiashile. I'm just kidding. I mean behind Cole Palmer. That was a joke. One of the best midfielders in the game, and that he may even come close to living up to his eye-watering transfer fee. Certainly, I think that he is more likely than Enzo Fernandez to do that, and as far as I'm aware, he also hasn't done or said anything racist, which is another big plus sign you'd have to say. 5th, Harry Kane. Another recent signing, there are 2 ways of spinning Harry Kane's potential €110 million move to Bayern Munich at this stage. The first is that he went there to win trophies, and in his debut campaign, Bayern ended a run of 11 straight Bundesliga titles by not only missing out on the title for the first time in over a decade, but slipping all the way to 3rd because he is cursed. And the second is that Kane did all that he could, putting on a centre-forward masterclass all season, scoring 36 goals in only 32 Bundesliga games, and making 56 goal contributions in 45 appearances in all competitions, and he was just let down by his teammates. He is 5th because the first one is ridiculous, and the second one is true. You might say, but Alfie, Ronaldo and Neymar's signings were marked down for failing on their own terms, you massive hypocrite and moron. Bit harsh, but you could say that. But the difference is that they have already left Juventus and PSG, whereas Kane is only in his second season at Bayern, in which he's already scored 10 goals in 9 games, he's still only 31, and if he hasn't won a trophy by the time that he leaves Bayern, I will apologise, he actually is cursed, and you can put him last, below Eden Hazard, who did win trophies at Real Madrid, he just made practically zero contribution towards them. Fourth, Declan Rice. Again, it is early days, so there is a large degree of speculation involved, but Declan Rice has been so good and so consistent for 5 or 6 seasons now that it's hard to see his form suddenly falling off a cliff at Arsenal. Yet to win anything at the Emirates, other than a Community Shield, Rice arrived last summer for €116.2 million, around the same fee as Moises Caicedo, plus a reported £5 million in potential future add-ons, and in his debut campaign, he made the PFA Team of the Year as the second best player in the league at his position, behind Rodri, as well as chipping in with 7 goals. I actually think Moises Caicedo has a higher ceiling than Rice, if he reaches his full potential, but there are a lot more variables and unknowns with Caicedo than there are with Rice. It should be said that the fact that Rice, in only his second season, on the basis that he is at least likely to be a very solid long-term central or holding midfielder, is enough to earn him a spot in 4th, speaks volumes about how weak the competition is. Third, Gareth Bale. The first €100 million signing, and still one of the best, had Gareth Bale left Real Madrid after a few seasons, or even as late as 2019, especially for a fee, he would probably take top spot in this list. Signed for €100 million after one of the finest individual campaigns that the Premier League has ever seen, Bale went from being almost a one-man team in his last season at Spurs, to the shadow of Cristiano Ronaldo at Real Madrid. Nonetheless, Bale put up excellent numbers from the right flank, formed a world-class front three alongside Ronaldo and Benzema, and routinely turned up in the very biggest games when Madrid needed him most, and Ronaldo perhaps wasn't quite at his scintillating best. His wonder goal against Barcelona in the final of the Copa del Rey, his header to put Madrid ahead against Atletico in the 2014 Champions League final, and his overhead kick against Liverpool, which was one of 2 goals that he scored off the bench in that game, to win Real Madrid the 2018 Champions League final, were all iconic moments which justified Bale's enormous fee, as well as his podium place in this list. The only negatives as far as Bale's move to Madrid is concerned were the myriad of injuries and the massive amounts of football that he missed as a result, his fractured relationship with supporters, and what felt like the club as a whole at times, his reduced impact particularly during his last 2 seasons, and the fact that he departed for nothing. I mean, it sounds like quite a lot when you put it like that, but remember all the good stuff that I said. With all of that being said, he could hardly rank below Declan Rice at this stage, so 3rd was really the lowest that Bale could come. Second, Jude Bellingham. It's very difficult to rank the signings of Gareth Bale versus Jude Bellingham. Bale has already been there and done it at Madrid, winning 5 Champions Leagues among an illustrious list of other personal and collective achievements. Meanwhile, Jude Bellingham has only spent 1 season at the Santiago Bernabeu, albeit he did also win a Champions League and La Liga double in an utterly stupendous debut campaign. I've put Bellingham second on the basis that he's only 21 years old, he is likely to be one of the best players on the planet for the next 10 years, should actually become much better than he is now, which is already good enough, to make a Ballon d'Or podium, and at €103 million, plus €30.9 million in potential future add-ons, he is one of the only €100 million plus players whose transfer fee looks as though it could be justifiable. In fact, in the long term, it may even prove to be a bit of a bargain. First, Kylian Mbappe. I am at risk of contradicting myself because I think it's highly likely that in the long term, Jude Bellingham will go down as a better signing for Real Madrid than Kylian Mbappe was for PSG, with Bellingham already having won the Champions League in Madrid, aged 21, having cost less, which Mbappe never managed in Paris, and whereas one would imagine Bellingham is likely to either spend almost his whole career at Real Madrid or depart for a massive fee, perhaps even more than they paid for him, Mbappe has already left PSG for nothing, having cost considerably more, about 75 million euros more to be precise, than Mbappe. With all of that having been said, I just couldn't countenance at this stage putting Bellingham, after one season ahead of Mbappe, who is PSG's all-time leading goalscorer, having scored a sensational 256 goals in 308 games for the club, winning 15 trophies and making the FIFA Pro World 11 4 times during that time. Mbappe was a fantastic signing for PSG, who couldn't have done much more other than A, not leave, or B, not leave on a free. Long term, there's every chance that Jude Bellingham will go down as a better signing and, who knows, maybe even Declan Rice, Moises Caicedo, or Antony. Yeah, alright, probably not Antony. For now though, through a web of half contradictions, it's hard to pick out a better €100 million plus signing than Kylian Mbappe to PSG, the second most expensive player of all time. That is it for today's video, but thank you all very much, as ever, for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it. I sincerely hope that was the case. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and of course, make sure that you're subscribed, and have notifications turned on not just for this channel, HITC Sevens, but also my second channel, Alfie Potsama, both of which should be about to appear on your screens now, along with a couple of videos that you might enjoy watching after this one. You can also find me on Twitter, Instagram, or Threads via the username @HITC Sevens on all three, should you wish to do so, and all of those links plus a whole lot more should be down in the video description below. Cheers.